Hello and welcome to News 9. I'm Aditya Raj Kaul and this is In India's Interest. Whenever we speak about Jammu and Kashmir or terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, one group, Pakistan-based Jaish-e-Muhammad, often comes to mind. In fact, over the last 2 decades or more, Jaish-e-Muhammad has been responsible for some of the most deadly attacks that have taken place not just in Jammu and Kashmir but also in Punjab and as well rest of the country. Of course, the Indian Parliament attack as well. What is Jaish-e-Muhammad? Who founded it? And why is it the deadliest terror organization, not just in South Asia, but perhaps the entire world? Joining us is Dr. Abhinav Pandya, the founder of the Usnas Foundation and the author of this latest book, Inside the Terrifying World of Jaish-e-Muhammad. So Abhinav, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Why Jaish-e-Muhammad? Why this book? We know that you are an expert on radicalization, on affairs that have happened in Jammu and Kashmir, but this is of immense value to anybody who wants to understand Pakistan, Jammu and Kashmir, terror activities, and in particular Jaish-e-Muhammad. You have put in immense level of research in this that is very much visible by interviewing people, by looking at statistics as well. So why this book?
Thank you very much, Aditya, for inviting me, and a very interesting question. Actually I found that over my last 5 to 6 years of ground level research and work in Kashmir, this is an organization which has always escaped the radar of global counter-terrorism community, think tank community. I mean, just imagine, this is the organization which has done most lethal damage to India, be it through Parliament attack or through the Pulwama attack, having brought two nuclear-powered adversaries twice to the verge of war. This organization was almost elusive in the world of academia. Lashkar-e-Taiba got that attention because of that 26/11 attacks in which many Westerners died. So after that, Christine Fair and Stephen Tankel wrote a book. Hizbul Mujahideen is a local organization which so definitely people have a much better knowledge of that. But this particular organization, they are so secretive and they are so sophisticated in their trade craft that it has always eluded our eyes. And even in terms of their modus operandi, they managed to surprise us. I mean, after every 5 years, generally in the security circuit, it is believed that Jaish has gone down. People start writing its obituaries, but then it resurfaces. Like after the Musharraf assassination attempts, we all thought that Jaish is going down the drain and Pakistani establishment has withdrawn its support. But then finally, with those Lal Masjid attacks and all that, after the departure of Parvez Musharraf, Jaish made a comeback. But later, with this Pathankot attack, Jaish again made a very massive entry, and finally it started the trend of this homegrown suicide bombing, suicide bombers, which finally culminated in a Pulwama-style Fidain attack. In fact, I must say that one of the first local Kashmiri boy who volunteered as a suicide bomber came from Jaish-e-Muhammad. That was back in 2001. Yes. Then they tried to explode the assembly and I guess the Badami Bagh cantonment also. So this is an organization which is very unique, and I think we all need to study that, because one more thing which is very interesting about this organization is that it has a Deobandi base. So this organization predates Pakistan, it predates ISI, it has the history of 150 odd years, when this Islamic separatism started in the South Asian subcontinent. So it's much more lethal than Wahhabism or Salafism, because the Wahhabism and Salafism, they don't have a local roots in South Asia. So this organization particularly, it traces its ideological origins to Shah Waliullah, and then this whole 150 years of Deobandi movement in Pakistan. So it has a very strong network in Pakistan as well as in India. So, and that is something which we really need to worry about. And it has pan-India ambitions. Unlike other groups like Lashkar and HM, which definitely they are also very religiously extremist and religious organizations, but then this particular organization, it is strictly very religious in nature. They say that we can go against ISI if required.
Yes, I have often heard statements of Masood Azhar and his counterparts actually criticizing Nawaz Sharif, the Pakistan army and the Pakistani government. But my question to you, the most lethal, deadly terror organization, Jaish-e-Muhammad. Why is it so? Because over the last few years, I've observed at least a couple of books I've read by journalists and police officers about Pulwama, about people from Bawalpur, Jaish-e-Muhammad, etc. But they have only touched upon Pulwama and the months around it. They haven't really gone into the extreme details of the genesis of Jaish-e-Muhammad and why is it so lethal. So my question to you is that there is Lashkar-e-Toiba, there is Hizbul Mujahideen, there is Al-Badr, there are numerous terror organizations with different modus operandi, same kind of funding, etc. But why is Jaish-e-Muhammad the deadliest of all, which is also actually bringing in these suicide bombers with immense level of radicalization and motivation?
Thank you. Again, I would say different factors. First of all, ideological indoctrination. I mean, they surpass the other groups. Secondly, like Lashkar believes in Ahle Hadith ideology. Now that is just 4% of Pakistan population, and the Ahle Hadith clergy, basically they are not on good terms with Lashkar, because they believe that this jihad can be launched only by the Khalifa and a proper Islamic state. A non-state actor cannot go for that. So they are kind of vulnerable, or they are kind of very dependent on Pakistan's deep state, or this ISI establishment. Okay. And thirdly, as far as Jaish is concerned, they have their own setup, like very widespread sprawling madrasa network. So in terms of finances, in terms of ideological indoctrination, they are not as dependent on ISI as Lashkar is. And then you will find that Lashkar, when it comes to Lashkar, it is more about appearances. Right? They go for those very big, Islamic gears and those big cars and the Taliban-style operations and all. But Jaish is very silent and subtle in operations. They are very professional in nature. Then I must say that the third point, this is the original Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent. We all hear about AQIS, which was started in 2014, but people find it very difficult to bring it to mention that originally Osama bin Laden provided the seed funding to Jaish-e-Muhammad. He was a great follower of Masood Azhar's father, and he really admired him a lot. So finally, when Masood Azhar was released, and Osama bin Laden, he supported this organization with funding. When it came to the division of assets between Harkatul Mujahideen and Jaish-e-Muhammad, Osama played a major role in that. So this is the organization which has, I must say, a very old history, international tentacles, and then they look at the entire India. They are not just confined to Kashmir. We saw that they targeted places in Ayodhya, okay, and also after that Masood Azhar, after the Gujarat riots, he planned to target places in other parts of the country also. And in the future, I feel that given the fact that we have these communal fault lines and the polarization is increasing by leaps and bounds, these Deobandi networks have a very strong chances of finding deep roots in the Indian subcontinent, in the Indian hinterland, okay? Because Deobandi network is spread across the country. Though the Indian Deoband differentiate itself from the Pakistani Deoband, okay? They say that formally they have no connect, but yes, at an ideological level, you cannot rule out the possibility that some of these deep-rooted connections are existing. Because we saw that when Masood Azhar came to Jammu and Kashmir, he was, the first station that he found was the Qasimia Bazaar, this Darul Uloom Deoband. Yes. So when he came to India, he visited Saharanpur Deoband establishment. So it's a dangerous organization in many ways. Even now, if you see in Kashmir, a lot of these militants who are coming from Pakistan, mostly those who are crossing from the Kathua Jammu region, these PAFF types, basically they are all Jaish boys and they are highly trained. They are coming all with all those American weapons like M4 assault rifles, and as far as my latest research goes, I am told that they are highly trained, in terms of combat skills. Even with at a distance of 100 feet, 200 feet, they are able to take headshots. And in terms of their mountain, fighting skills, hiding and survival tactics, they are much better than the other groups.
I'll come to the present times, Abhinav, but I want to again go back to the foundation of Jaish-e-Muhammad. Yes, they might have 100 to 150 years of history of this radicalization, but do you feel that the release of Masood Azhar that happened after the IC-814 hijacking exactly about 25 or more years ago played a part? Do you think that history would have turned a little different, at least, if that handing over of Masood Azhar had not happened at that particular time?
Yes, I believe so, because you are absolutely right, and you have raised a very valid point. Because these Deobandi terrorist groups, because since they have that history going back to this in the recent past, 1979, when the Huji was formed, and with this Soviet invasion in Afghanistan and the American intervention. So they already, right from the beginning, they had these, multinational operations, and they were very strong and active in Afghanistan, okay, with the Madrasa Binoria and Akhora Khatak as the two centers, with this spreading arms like Haqqani network and all that. So, they had those airs about them that, well, we are a global transnational terror group, But ISI always wanted, groups as in Kashmir, which could be firmly under its grip, And it has always been a strategy of ISI to innovate in terms of terror tactics. Like initially, when JKLF was active, they wanted something which was much more religious and much more extremist in nature and under a better control. Say they brought Hizbul Mujahideen. Later, they thought that, Hizbul Mujahideen is still a local group. We need foreign terrorist groups. Then they brought Lashkar-e-Taiba. After that, they thought that, well, it's not just about one terrorist group. You need more, And you need something which can be a counter to Lashkar, okay. But then again, if you bring a Deobandi terrorist group, which is a counter to Lashkar, you need to have a group which is firmly under the grip of ISI. That could have happened only with the release of Masood Azhar. Because all these Deobandi outfits like Huji and Harkatul Ansar, Harkatul Mujahideen, they were having lot of internal splits back in those days, And they were almost, many of their commanders were acting like, locally independent warlord kind of situation. But then, to resolve these differences in Kashmir, Masood Azhar was initially sent to resolve these differences between Harkatul Mujahideen and Harkatul Ansar. So Pakistan thought that it won't work like this, because Kashmir is our own forte. Well, Afghanistan may be an international terrain in terms of the operation of terror groups, but Kashmir is strictly an ISI forte. So you need groups which are firmly under the strong grip of ISI. So that's why they needed a group like that, and Masood Azhar could be the most valuable asset to create a group. And it was a deliberate strategy of ISI to keep Jaish-e-Muhammad under the firm control of one family, that is the Masood Azhar Alvi family. That's how you keep a strong control over a group like Jaish-e-Muhammad.
And we have seen Masood Azhar's family members actually coming to Kashmir time and again. I remember several encounters in Bandipora and other places where his nephews and perhaps sons also died in encounters. But Abhinav, I want to also understand from you, ever since the abrogation of 370, I have been observing not just in these 5 years, but before that, Jaish-e-Muhammad and other terror groups in the dark web, etc. I have also regularly followed the Al-Kalam Weekly, that has come, and Saifullah, his spokesperson, who used to read that out in that 7 or 10 minute audios. But after the nullification of 370, why has Masood Azhar disappeared? I remember when, I think the former foreign minister of Pakistan spoke about Masood Azhar, that he's unwell, etc. But in these last few years, he seems to have disappeared from the scene. What is your understanding? Do you think this is deliberate undergrounding of Masood Azhar, or do you think he's not alive anymore?
Well, these are all very clandestine areas, I mean, I am not privy to the very secretive information, okay, that may be with the intelligence agencies, but yes, as a counter-terrorism analyst, I will try to put across a few scenarios. First of all, I must say that, even ISI has had its, a slightly odd equation with Masood Azhar and Jaish-e-Muhammad right from the beginning, because when we saw that when Musharraf started supporting American global war on terror, after that, they had their differences with Masood Azhar, and his name even figured up, in this Musharraf assassination attempts. But after that, ISI went back. ISI protected Jaish-e-Muhammad, and they went back to this organization, again started using it. So that's one scenario. But besides that, I mean, I don't think that he has disappeared, because even after the Taliban formation, there were like a lot of, I would say rumors, and in fact, some concrete news items also that he went to Afghanistan, met Taliban leadership. Besides that, I think, he's ill, he's not keeping well, because of his, this diabetic problem and dialysis and all those issues. So then there was a news that, he was in the Rawalpindi Army Hospital and all that. So that's one reason, okay. But I feel that currently Masood Azhar is playing more of a strategic role, like it is more of a patron, like in terms of inspiration, motivation, recruitment and all that. So he's not the operational part. I mean, he's not taking care of the operational part. Operational part is being taken care of by Mufti Rauf Mara. Okay, so that is the de facto operational commander. But Masood Azhar, at an ideological, certainly he is active, and deliberately, I think ISI is also playing it a little, down because of this the scrutiny of the foreign all these international counter-terrorism watchdogs and all. And if you look at the ISI operations after 370 in general, like they have created a very different model of terrorist organization. Now you don't even see Lashkar coming up and claiming any terror group, any terrorist operation. Yes. You have all these new groups like PAFF and TRF, and which very secular sounding names, and even we are very unclear and vague about their memberships, and people say that they have members from different terror groups, and sometimes people associate one particular group with Lashkar. In some other cases they associate it with Jaish. So Pakistan has entirely changed the modus operandi. But yes, this relationship between Jaish and Pakistani establishment is organic and is very rock solid. That continues, okay. And besides that, even Pakistani army and ISI has a very strong Deobandi segment. So this relationship is not going to fade away. And Masood Azhar definitely continues to be a revered figure in those circles. Yes, for very tactical reasons, he is not featuring very prominently. But yes, there was one news item, I think, in which he declared, there was one article also in which he mentioned that he would be giving some lecture for some time in a day. That was the online dissemination of his ideas, so that was something which came up almost, I guess, a year and a half back, But after that, I couldn't keep a track. Whether it was followed or not. Yes.
Well, there is rebranding of terror groups that has been underway over the last few years, as you mentioned, TRF and PAF and others. But how do you see this resurfacing of terror attacks that is taking place, particularly in Jammu and in recent days in Kashmir as well? There's a two-part to this question. One is in significance of Jammu and Kashmir elections. And there were no attacks, no killings during the elections, but suddenly a hike taking place, some of the biggest attacks taking place over the last few months. Secondly, in respect of the rest of the country, do you expect the Jaish-e-Muhammad again to rake up places like Ayodhya, Sri Krishna Bhumi, others, or do you also feel that these radicalized people can engage in lone wolf attacks? For instance, something that happened in Udaipur, your city, where you saw, in fact, a tailor and almost being beheaded in a most brutal fashion. How would you see the immediate next few months or years in concerning Jaish-e-Muhammad?
Yeah, perfect. So I'll begin with the second question. Okay. Yes, I do see I believe that Jaish-e-Muhammad can rake up situation in the entire country, in the near future also, because now things are very fertile. The situation currently provides a very fertile ground to Jaish-e-Muhammad, and Jaish-e-Muhammad is very when it comes to operational matters, they are very professional and they are very flexible. So since they follow that Deobandi ideology, that doesn't mean that they will not entertain people who are following the Barelvi outfits and all. So here, in terms of operations, they will be working like Al-Qaeda with the pan-Islamist ideology, and they have these followers, the Deobandi networks in almost every city of the country, and they're really good. They can have their sleeper cells everywhere, and they can recruit youngsters not from Kashmir but from the other parts of the country, who can join them. They can even organize lone wolf attacks or even commit something which is at a much bigger scale with the direct links to the organization. So they have ample opportunities to get more active. And yes, lone wolf attacks, I see it happening more often because, the things are getting very ugly, because if you see almost from every city, we are hearing things about these, little communal fights and, all these, frictions coming up. And currently, so the communal riots always took place in India, but there is a difference. Previously, they were happening over local matters, but right now they are happening with a different consciousness that Muslims have to consolidate, and that they perceive that it's a Hindu government which is ruling in India, and they are posing a threat to the Muslim identity, which is a very extremist version of thinking. In reality, there is nothing like that because, government has been absolutely fair, even all their acts like CA, NRC and all, they were not at all harmful to Islam as a religion or to the Muslims who are the loyal citizens of this country. But yes, they were detrimental to the extremist and the extremist ideology and extremist actors. But in general, I'll be very blunt to say that, the overwhelming majority of the Muslim population, they perceive, and they kind of have a soft corner toward these extremist ideologies and extremist actors, and they are getting more and more radicalized, and they also connect to the internationally what's happening in the West Asia also, that they feel that India and Israel are friends, and Israel is committing a lot of atrocities against Palestinians, so they have to consolidate in India against the current government, Modi government, as well as internationally against India and this Israel alliance also. So they feel that right now that this is the time to take this whole I would say Islamist agenda to a next level. So this is the broad idea. Well, it's a topic which requires a very detailed discussion, so yes. I'm not getting into those details, but yes, it's definitely a danger. And organizations like Jaish can work very nicely in alliance with AQIS, ISKP, and we have seen that Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent and ISKP have not really focused much on Kashmir. They know that Kashmir is more or less in an autopilot mode, so they are focusing more on the hinterland. Even in the recent past also 10 to 15 this ISKP cells were busted in various parts of the country. So Jaish can become very handy in facilitating the work of these organizations. And one more interesting part with Jaish is that so when Jaish cadres, they just look like they're mostly from southern Punjab or the Multan Saraiki region, and also you have this Karachi belt also, so they can easily gel well with the the typical North Indian crowd. Okay, they look just like people from UP and Bihar, and they can speak like that, and so it'll be very big, very challenge. It'll be a big challenge to identify them, and if they really want to orchestrate certain activities, and I see it very likely.
One last question to you, Abhinav, is that Masood Azhar was also given the credit of bringing in radicalization in London, yes. in UK. Yeah. Could you briefly tell us about that, how that happened? And finally, if I tell you that Masood Azhar is dead today, do you think that the organization Jaish-e-Muhammad will still continue to flourish and create a possible major challenge, particularly for India, because perhaps that organization continues to be funded by ISI and is perhaps on this automated mode in masjids and madrasas and other places?
Yes, first question, yes, he is solely responsible for bringing jihad to UK, and Masood is a very charismatic speaker actually, he's kind of a rebel rouser, but when he speaks to the audience which wants to relate to what he says, he can be absolutely mesmerizing. Okay, so he used to visit London back in various parts of the world, various countries in Africa, in Europe also, to collect funds, basically for this Harkatul Mujahideen. So initially back in I think 1990, there was the first visit to UK where he delivered speeches in about 40 mosques, Dewsbury Mosque, and he established a very nice, excellent framework of Deobandi jihadist network in UK. And after that, there were 7/7 bombings, and many radicals came from UK and started joining these Deobandi terror outfits. We have the example of Omar Sheikh Saeed, which joined Jaish and then later became ISI's asset in Al-Qaeda, and so there were many cases.
Killing Daniel Pearl.
There was one, I think, UK, a British citizen, who joined Jaish and he came to Kashmir also, So there were many cases, in which the Britishers, basically the British citizens, the people who were settled there, they volunteered to join his organization. And second question, well, I believe that even if Masood is dead, the organization is going to flourish because they have created a very highly talented and motivated second rung and third rung leadership. His brother Mufti Rauf is taking care of the organization very well. Like, he is a de facto commander in chief now, handling the operations. And then they have really very skilled people. They're taking care of the infiltration part, launching pads, and they're second generation, third generation militants like Umar Farooq, Saifullah. They're all in terms of motivation. We hardly need any evidence. How indoctrinated they are. They have come to Kashmir. They have they have been killed in encounters. So this is the level of motivation of even the second and third generation. So I think the organization will flourish. And besides that, their whole this Deobandi, ideological and financial and religious infrastructure umbrella which they have, this ecosystem, that will ultimately make sure that the organization flourishes. Okay, and if at an extreme possibility, if this organization, like let's say, peters out, okay, then it may come up as, with some other organization.
Rebranding.
Rebranding, something like that.
Well, Pakistan is known for rebranding terror groups, and creating a challenge for India. I'm sure the Indian security forces and intelligence are ready to counter that. But for our audience,
there was one question which you asked regarding the recent attacks in Kashmir. Okay, I forgot to answer. So, yes, I feel that the recent attacks in Kashmir, like, okay, so this is something which needs to be taken very seriously. So first of all, regarding the elections, yes, during elections there was no violence, because I'm told that Pakistan wanted that some kind of local government establishment should come in Kashmir, because they felt that people were absolutely reeling under the pressure, and even Pakistan could not do much after the abrogation of Article 370. So it was losing credibility. So that's why they didn't want to add more to the people's. I would say that's what people thought, that they wanted some local government. So Pakistan thought that let's have the local. Let us allow the local government to come. But then now they feel that, like, if local government comes in absolute power, like if they get the home ministry and the police control and all that, then that will end up assuaging the people's concerns and worries, and that they fear that will finally aid the real integration of the people of Kashmir to India, because people will believe that, well, India has given back our state, and so now we have to live with India. So they are actually ramping up the terrorist attacks. But there is one more thing. I feel that right now Pakistan is consolidating, and they are sending militants in huge number. There is a massive infiltration which is going on, and from all sides, from this Jammu belt, from the Bandipora side also. So they are consolidating all these militants, and these attacks which are taking place right now, they could be the cases of diversions,
right?
And they might be planning something really big for the future.
Okay. Well, Jaish-e-Muhammad poses a significant threat even today. It's been more than 25 years that they've been very, very active ever since Masood Azhar was released. But for our viewers who are watching us, this is the book, Inside the Terrifying World of Jaish-e-Muhammad by Abhinav Pandya. If you want to understand not just the Kashmir conflict, but terror attacks that have taken place in the last 3 decades, and how this particular group has functioned, got trained, and become the most deadly terror outfit in South Asia, you must pick this book online or at a bookstore near you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aditya. Thank you very much.